All right, hello everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm back at you with another video discussing decks once again. I'm thrilled to have Janktivist, aka John, on to talk about the two decks that he just went and won Man on the Moon's 64-person online circuit opener that immediately preceded the Circuit Breaker Invitational on to chat about his decks, why he brought them, what they did, and go over two of the replays from the cut that he thought were really kind of interesting for both decks. With all that said, uh, hello, John. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, hey Jeff. Thanks for having me. This is really exciting.
Yeah. So I guess we should maybe just start with, saying what decks you brought. Uh,
Sure. So going in, I brought PD Precision Design, and for my runner, I brought that Mulch Lou deck, maybe just with a couple different variations on cards from the original list, but at its core, the same basic idea.
and I realized I somehow didn't pull. Oh no, I did bring this one up. Fantastic. Okay. So I guess maybe a place to start this conversation is: were these the only decks you were considering, or were there other decks you were kind of looking at for being in the meta?
Yeah, so before I pivoted to PD and started practicing that, I was practicing an R plus list that was just, what was it called? What did we end up calling it? I think the Keneal plus 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 list or something like that.
Yeah.
The Yeah, the idea on that list just being, you're installing a ton of assets. You hopefully get wage workers to, install four things at once or to quadruple advance your artificial crypto crash. And then, if the runner runs trashes things, you just punish them with Oppo research. And then you try to get, the runner to steal 3 points or you to get to 3 points somehow relatively quickly. So those Oppo research just turns into four tags. And, while the ice in that deck is not, terribly difficult to get through and there's not that much of it, just sort of being sent into sort of tag hell and being punished every turn by R plus, while R plus in turn is getting rewarded, was working out pretty well until, we were playing against the Lou deck or the Loop deck a lot, and it
It,
just demolished it.
I did see someone say I heard loop too many times. It is Lou because
It is.
yeah.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. I've been saying Lou, but then I get on the stream and I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. Let me say
Yeah,
both to cover myself. But Lou, good.
yeah. So yeah, R plus was definitely looking like. I mean, it was like one of the best decks in UK Nats, and I of course cannot find it now to save my life. But yeah, I think it's interesting that this Lou deck has emerged, and it really did seem like it kind of just shut out the options to really play that style of R plus list because it was able to just stop most of the hard damage from the deck.
Yeah, between just being able to trash everything for free, the wage workers, the Amanis, I mean, really whatever else, and then having solidarity badge to, just clear one of the tags that you get from, Opera research. That was really helpful. And then it also doesn't need to steal the agendas; it can just imp your agendas. And so, in order for you to get to threat three, um, what you need for oppo research in order for it to become hard hitting news really, uh it can just decide to not steal agendas and then you'll have to score the agendas instead to get to threat three. So it really just stopped the deck.
Yeah,
The loot deck just really stopped the R plus deck.
yeah. I there's a lot of interesting little includes in here, right? Like you're on two boomerangs, which I think makes sense when you look at your breaker suite. It's pretty bare the bones, right? One of each breaker, two Audreys, and three Botuluses. I can see the boomerangs definitely being really helpful for kind of mid and early game contests. I think the tranquilizer is a really interesting include. Did you end up using it at all during the day?
um yeah, I think I did use the tranquilizer once, and then I mean, it mattered in the way that it kind of set up a threat and it made the the corp, if I'm remembering correctly, have to sort of pause on jamming a bit.
Mm.
And yeah, and so that did something, but I never got to a board state um, where you know the board was just full of big resed ice, and I had something like a cookbook down with the tranquilizer with simul chips, and I can just sort of recycle the tranquilizers for instant dereses.
Hmm.
That's really, what it's for. But the board states just never got to be that way over the course of the game. I think over the course of the tournament, I think one other time I was able to install uh, tranquilizer. Was in my first game in the cut against Augustus Caesar, where he, really handily beat me. And I
Hmm.
think, if I'm remembering that correctly, he was just really good on sort of, purging and being patient until he just had, a whopping 3 credits to double seamless and advance out the Ikawa that had just been hanging out in the server for a little bit. So he played around it pretty well.
Very cool. Um, let's also. So I think the first matchup we're actually going to see though is PD. This art. It's kind of interesting. This deck was, nowhere. Well, no, I felt like it wasn't talked about much prior to Worlds. Did pretty well at Worlds. Didn't show up much at UK Nationals, and then came back in this event with a vengeance. Like it was. I think the like highest portion of any ID of top cut placements was PD, and it comes in first and second, and maybe even I think first, second, maybe even third and fourth in this event. Like it ran this event to a large degree.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was on it, obviously. Augustus Caesar was on it. Whiteblade Eric was on it. And Izzy was on it, I believe. I believe is yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yes. Izzy was on it. Absolutely. Um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So didn't have much rep in UK Nats, except for, of course, that it won UK Nats, right?
Okay.
um,
I
but you're right. Wasn't like hugely represented. I mean, this was just sort of Rodham kind of like bringing his classic deck into a tough field and just playing it really excellently. And then I think it had the success at UK Nats because of Rodham that a bunch of us were like, oh yeah, let's play PD again.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's. I think this is one of those debates that people go back and forth a lot. I'm starting to come down to like architect deployment test is almost always right. But I guess how did you feel about architect deployment test versus like Vitruvius, its common replacement?
Sure. I've never loved Vitruvius as part of the PD agenda suite. Because I can get Vitruvius to 4, and I can get back another seamless or something like that when I need to for the purpose of like double seamlessing out in Ikawa. But by the time I'm ready to score in Ikawa, I think I usually want it to be that last agenda. I'll hopefully have 2 seamless in hand anyway, or
Hmm.
I'll have made the board state such that I can advance the Ikawa once and not have to worry about that second seamless. But Architect Deployment Test has a lot of good counterplay against Criminal and Lou, I feel. So,
Hmm.
Criminal puts down Hermes, right? You can Architect Deployment Test to install and res a piece of ice that obviously not the piece of ice that Hermes is going to bounce, but you can put it on the server that you think where the bounce is going to happen, or a server that would be made vulnerable by the bounce,
Yeah,
right? So they put down Hermes, you res something, the ice that they were going to bounce, well, that ice still gets bounced, but there's a different ice in its place.
yeah,
um, against Lou, if you can just kind of get some more big ice down a Bran or an MIC or something like that, you're in pretty good shape. It can also help you fetch something like a defensive upgrade, or even Mavirus or something like that. And in those matchups where that's not 100% relevant, to even get like a 3 cost ice res or a 6 cost ice res, the architect deployment test ends up being, like a score that ends up being worth like somewhere between like 4 and 8 credits.
yeah. No, for sure. I guess the maybe another. the other interesting question I should ask is like everyone brought PD, everyone played around with the last couple of slots. What to you were the slots that you were kind of agonizing or thinking about before bringing this list to the event?
I was having a conversation with myself and others about the benefits of Regolith versus Vovo.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, I should say that the list that we are looking at now, despite like all of my changes, changing things up, switching them back, revising back again, this did end up being, I think, card for card Rotom's list from UK Nats. I mean, I didn't
Uh,
just take it. I didn't just take it and run
yeah,
with
yeah,
it. I
yeah.
mean, like, but just after going back and forth with everything and everyone, this is just where I landed on. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And Patrick, of course, has been a big proponent of Regolith in PD for a while now, but that was the big conversation
Hmm.
for me. You know, Regolith versus Vovo, or even do I go with three greasing the palm um, instead of one greasing the palm and two Regolith?
Hmm.
And the greasing the palm, does give you some speed, which I like, but one of the interesting things I think in the meta and sort of reading what the big matchups would be, against Criminal and against the Lou deck was, I needed money, right? Like I
Hmm.
just
Yeah,
needed
yeah.
more. I just needed more money. I think PD used to be the deck where you're like, I want to win by turn 7, turn 8, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Turn 9 if I have to compromise. And while it can do that still, there are a lot of games that you're going to go to like turn 12, turn 15,
Yeah.
right? And so you will need something to sustain you and to help you, boost back on your econ or to get a little bit ahead on your econ. Because when PD is running really, really well, or at least when this iteration of PD is running really, really well, you're never super rich. You just pretty much
Yeah.
always have the credits that you need.
All right, so let's get into our first of the two replays you brought. This is your game against Izzy. This is in the top cut. This is after both of you have lost one game, if I'm remembering correctly. This is the fourth place match, I believe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you're playing
Um,
against. Oh, sorry.
no, I was going to say that. Yeah, I think Eric slash Whiteblade was dropping, and so this effectively was the losers final. But Eric
Hmm.
had already, I think, earned third place.
Okay, cool. So you're playing at this point. You know the list. This is Rotom's Sable list. You know, card for card. Maybe you know that at the time. Maybe he's chatting with you, telling you it's his list card for card. What are you thinking about? You know, in terms of Mulligan, and then also maybe let's start. What's your overall game plan? What modifications do you need to make to it to account for Sable? And then we'll talk about
Hmm.
Mulligan later.
Sure. So I want to start by getting some money and then getting a decent ice on HQ. Obviously, to prevent against the diversions, which is like of course reasonable versus Crim. But Sable's going to have a lot of play on HQ, and I want to start limiting her central accesses, except for maybe on archives. When her mark comes up.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a brand, I see a hedge fund against Criminal. I'm not really thinking about trying to fire off an immediate Rashida.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually much more concerned with getting something decent on HQ, and then if I have that Rashida, trying to figure out a way to get the Rashida out that second turn. That's not
Yeah.
100% always the case, but that's kind of usually where my head is. Against Anarch or against Shaper, I would probably have done like hedge fund, Brand in a remote, Rashida in a remote, but this one ends up being a little bit different.
Yeah, I think that is kind of one of the adaptations you generally make with Crim. I think this is also, it's like not the best possible hand, but it's pretty much a snap keep anyway against anyone because Hedge Fund, Rashida, a good piece of ice and a Seamless is very good, and Ikawa, while not the agenda you want in your hand, like it's okay.
Yeah. I'm not scoring out anything immediately right now here. So having the Icawa in hand as the one agenda, I was like, oh, good, only one agenda. And then my immediate draw was Off-World Office, and I was like, okay, that's tournament PD for sure. Getting two agendas in your hand at turn one.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, right. Right now I'm thinking I have two definite clicks, right? Hedge fund and most likely the brand on HQ. And so, because there's sort of a question mark for that third click, that question mark turns into a first click draw just to see what else
Yeah.
develops.
Yeah.
I get, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say Gatekeeper is like a great draw and a great example of why you do want to draw first click, because it's much better to put this Gatekeeper down, I think, on HQ than uh Brand, just for like enabling you to play aggressively early game. Though maybe you evaluate this a little differently than I do.
Yeah. I actually I draw Gatekeeper and I like that. But then and I'm thinking about putting Gatekeeper down. But I think I ultimately decide to go with Bran here just because I want that big chunky ice
Yeah.
on HQ for always now. Um, if Izzy runs Gatekeeper, if Izzy runs my hand turn one, then all of a sudden I'm resing the Gatekeeper. Sure, it fires, but now all of a sudden, um, it's zero strength, and there's Amakuas in the deck, and now HQ is vulnerable.
Yeah. And I think in general, I'm going to be trying to just like move past Izzy's turns. Well, basically Izzy's turn involved getting an Amakua down, getting some money back up, drawing some cards. So they're ending their turn, or sorry, she's ending their turn on 5 credits and 5 cards, and an Amakua with 2 counters. So making a small advance on her board state, though maybe not. It's not a blowout turn for Izzy by any means. And then,
No, very yeah, very strong first turn though from her,
yeah.
and she's definitely on her way, which is great for her.
Yes,
So
yes,
I'm really happy. I'm really happy to see a drafter here, and now I can, start to protect our R&D, and then I can start to get Rashida set up for a fire with a gatekeeper, and so I draw that drafter. Perfect. I mean, I know what my 3 clicks are as
yeah,
soon as that card comes out.
yeah. It's just setting up the shields up against Krim, which is what you want to really do early. We see a Carpe Diem, getting more of these Amaku counters. Pinhole comes down. I'm like just passing through all decisions. It's obviously sucks to lose Rashida, but it's going to happen. And then a Mystic comes down as well.
Yeah. Now at this point, it's 2 turns in. I'm like, I am going to lose this game. I I lose my Rashida. There's 2 archive marks in a row with the second one with Carpe Diem.
Yeah,
Amaku is getting charged up, and now I'm like, okay, now all of a sudden I'm in really really early trouble because of that pinhole.
yeah,
So I see the Trank Grid. I like the Trank Grid, um, and yeah, we can move on.
yeah, yeah.
I
I
think,
think
and yeah,
Yep, click to
go
draw
ahead.
makes
Sorry.
sense here. I could see even just saying we're going to click to draw again and we're going to install the Tranquility Home Grid. Next turn might be something like Manigarm Offworld, depending on what the draw and what Izzy's turn looks like. There's definitely a part of me that would have been tempted to just be like Tranquility Home Grid, Offworld Office, be the Gatekeeper, but you know, it's probably a little bit more risky than you actually need to be with this hand in the game. And I think drawing
Yeah.
here, as you did, makes a ton of sense. Just putting the Tranquility Home Grid down and seeing if you can get Izzy to spend some resources chasing it is a good end, outcome for you.
Yeah, because right now she still can't get through the gatekeeper, even with
Yeah,
Amakua, charging up.
yeah. And Amakua does get charged up to 5 here. Um,
Yeah, and I remember this. I wasn't 100% sure what the five could have been.
yeah,
Um, 4 or 6, but I mean, I think she's also covered every single ice except for gatekeeper effectively at this point, because even hitting into a brand is just click the first sub and then just let it
yeah.
fire.
Okay, and here comes. I guess maybe the argument for getting up to 4 is that, or getting up to 5 was that Izzy felt like she could get up to 6 on the R&D access and then land the doof this way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I'm really, really happy to see this doof. Like really happy. And uh I have the brand there. The brand's gonna eat up all the credits and they're gonna
Yeah.
go right to me and right to my ice. Um, and then, to put Izzy to a decision if she, wants to basically go broke to get a single access,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And that's very rarely worth it. I guess actually the interesting question is maybe like, did you think about not resing the drafter there just because it was going to be broken for 2? And, I guess maybe looking at Izzy's credit pool, it actually just makes a lot of sense for us to drafter, even though it's going to be broken for 2 credits, just
Yeah,
because
yeah, that
it
that
is
was
something you
that
can
was
pinch.
exactly it. Yeah, she was at something like 5 there, and I thought, all right, res it now. It's going to cost her at least 2 credits now each time she wants to go through. She's not super rich yet, and I have my key econ card in Trank Grid,
Yeah.
so I can start fighting back.
Yeah. Oh wow. I mean, I was just thinking like, man, I want to put something on the Tranquility home grid, but I don't want to like care about losing it. And Spin Doctor seems like the ideal card for that. Um,
Yeah, I think I do Spin Doctor. I might do Spin Doctor on the outside. Um, Here, no, no, no. I just do the Trank Grid because and the Managarm because Izzy's at 2 credits and
yeah.
uh, can't really effectively do anything to Trank Managarm from 2 credits without Miss Bones, and then Miss Bones comes down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I guess you
Uh,
still have. I mean, fortunately for you, it's a click 3 run on server 1, so a Manic Arm res does stop it here. Um,
yeah, yeah, and that was very fortunate, and something like what just happened there is what I wanted to happen for that turn on her
yeah.
end, minus the Miss Bones.
Yes.
So
Yes.
now at this point, I know that this server is dead. This server is dead next turn, right?
Hmm.
Um, and now it's just a question of, well, what do I prep up for doing the turn after, right? Because
Yeah.
once we pass back to Izzy, everything there is going to get trashed.
Yeah. So I
So I
guess.
want to
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So I want to get a Spindo going, and then I want to just toss something in server 1 to A, get the trend credits, and B, start to drain the Miss Bones.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost wonder if you just want to put down the second Spin Doctor, but I guess probably not. Oh no, it is
No, I
exactly
think I
what you do.
do.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
because that's a Spin Doctor I can lose now.
yeah,
Because I'm assuming the first charge is going to be on the remote, and now that's something like 9 Miss Bones credits. And
yeah,
while there's still 3 there, sure, mostly it's drained, and I can hopefully just get back to uh, starting to try to get a little bit momentum back.
yeah, yeah. And the hedge fund draw here certainly doesn't hurt either. Um,
Yeah, the draws are very fortunate for me this game, so I think this is just like click hedge fund border control and archives, or if it's not, that's exactly what it should be.
and
Yeah,
it's exactly what it is. And the reason you're doing this, obviously, is now to set up a purge next turn on Amakua, because while Izzy has put on some really good pressure, they have been unable to find a breaker to handle things. And also complaining about not finding any events to use on their big mystic here. And losing a classic from hand is a real bummer for them.
yeah, yeah. So her having trouble finding, a sure gamble or a bravado there was really, really fortunate for me. Um, it kind of bought me an extra turn basically.
Yeah.
And that was despite drawing like 6 cards with um,
Yeah, with Dr. Nuka.
yeah, Nuka, yeah.
Yep. And then
So exactly.
yeah, and then
Exactly, yeah.
purge makes a ton of sense here. Just we're ahead. Let's lock it in and take it over from here. Um, and I would not be too surprised if this ends up being kind of pretty straightforward from here. Uh, like gatekeeper off world. Okay, I yeah, I would like, part of me is like, oh, maybe just put the off world in, but Rashida is probably actually a little more valuable than off world here still. Um,
Yeah, I mean, off-world could have definitely been correct for sure. I mean, I think my idea with Rashida here, and I'm not saying it was the best idea or anything like that,
mhm.
is just I feel my momentum is really back now. If I get a Rashida fire off and like I get decent draw and a little bit more money, like I'm pretty certain I can just start closing off the game.
Hmm.
Um, where off world gives me 2 points, gives me some money. The Rashida fire again, if it goes well, just
Yeah.
sets me up for the win.
Yep. And presumably spin doctoring here because hey, our R&D is actually at a somewhat high agenda density. We've only seen two, so that leaves what, six in the list still.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to lower that density. And if Izzy finds a way to run back, obviously it's better. Um,
Hmm.
all right. Pretty solid draw. I mean, to me, this is just tranquility, off world, all in the remote. Um, and I like
I
the
think I
draft.
go with the. I think I. Yeah.
Yeah,
I do go with the off world at this point, right?
yeah. I do like the draft on R&D. I was trying to figure out what I'd want to do with my extra click. There was a part of me that was like, do I just advance it? But I think that does lose to Hermes a little bit more than would be ideal. Um,
Yeah, and I have the two seamless, so I
yeah,
can double seamless it and get the extra click.
yeah,
Um, so I res the border control to start like neutralizing, the money from info bounty.
yeah,
It does start charging up the Kurapira, and I make a mistake with the border control a little bit later on in the game, but for now I think it's fine.
yeah,
They're effectively getting zero click, zero money from info bounty for having to go through the border control, and while Kurapir is charging up on border control, to get Kurapir fully charged up on border control costs you 6 credits anyway. In which case, the difference between paying 6 credits over the course of 3 turns to charge up Kurapir versus, you know, um, like spending the 7 credits on Bran, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that exchange. So they still have to spend 6 credits and 3 clicks to charge up Kurapir to get a free Bran bypass. And I'm like, that's okay with me right now.
yeah. Yeah, it's like basically they spent 2 credits. Yeah, they like spent a click and 2 credits to get a counter on Kurapira, which is probably fine. Um,
Yeah.
and I like the double seamless there, and then presumably putting the Rashida, yeah, in the remote. Just say I'm ahead on tempo. Let's keep it going. Um, I even think like, yeah, this bravado run. Maybe you're border controlling on approach here. I don't know that makes a huge difference.
Yes. So I I save the border control for a little bit. And
Yeah,
I actually save it throughout the entire game. At some point, I should pop it, and it's a mistake that I don't pop it. But at this point, I'm keeping it because I know that there's a second pinhole in the list, and I want to guard against the pinhole for a little bit.
yeah. No, I think the guard makes actually like a good amount of sense. I think at some point, if I'm remembering this game correctly, it stops making sense, but that's all right. Uh, that
Yeah,
said, you don't mind the runner spending like effectively 2 credits and turning off their info bounty for 2 turns to take a single on HQ. It's just not something you're super worried about as the corp in most situations. Um,
yeah, yeah,
all right. So Rashida doesn't find us anything great per se. It does find us next Rashida. So, I'm looking at this. I'm like, do I? It's I guess looking at this, I'm immediately thinking Rashida in server one, Gatekeeper on HQ, Mavirus somewhere on the board, maybe server one as well. Um,
yeah. I think that's exactly what I do. I really don't want to score the Ikawa.
yeah,
I want that, especially against Crim, to be that last score because, um, just to kind of get a 5-3 out there that doesn't do anything for you, just kind of throws momentum back to Crim.
yeah.
And I just don't want to do that.
Yep. And I think this draft of res makes a ton of sense given the relative economic positions of the game. Here we finally find what you're looking for: architect deployment test, a tempo positive 4/2,
And a second seamless.
and the second seamless. Yeah, this is a great draw. I guess just brand on server one here. Oh, okay. I
I
guess,
feel pretty good about
yeah.
server one because there's no solution to the
Mm,
code gates yet, and I have them a virus.
yep.
Um, and I don't want them to I don't want them to start like dropping that whatever their multi-axis is and start to get like double shots on R&D.
Yeah.
I'm really expecting a Hermes to come down, but those just must be at the bottom of her stack, which is again just unbelievably lucky for me.
Yeah. All right. So we see a dirty laundry, Potma virus, gatekeeper res, and I think flip switched used here if I'm remembering this game. Oh no, not used. Okay. Um,
No,
Okay, so actually, I think this is a really interesting point to me where you Gatekeeper fires, you draw two agendas off of it, and then I think you shuffle three of them back. Yeah, you shuffle. Yeah, so now
yeah,
you have just the Ikawa in hand. I guess
yeah,
would you mind
just
explaining why?
sure. So, I mean, I already have the architect deployment test in the server. So that represents zero point 0.4, and then
Mm,
ICAWA represents zero point 0.7. So I don't need the other agendas to win the game. Um, Izzy's at 6 credits. There's a big old Bran on R&D.
mm-hmm.
Also, two drafters. So, the 4 credits that the drafters are going to cost plus whatever ridiculous amount it's going to cost to get through Bran with Kurapira. Um, those are just the safest places to be, I think. I'm still
Yeah,
expecting a uh, Hermes to drop, and I don't want again something like drop the Unity or not even drop the Unity once Gatekeeper goes to 0, right? Like boomerang the brand,
yeah.
hit HQ, and then bounce whatever agendas I have.
Okay, yeah, I was just about to ask because I was like, oh, I could see a world where I want to keep both Ikawas on the off chance that like the one in my hand gets sniped, and suddenly I'm like desperately trying to find an agenda. But as I say that, I'm like, well, there's actually only 15 cards in R&D. Yes, there's only one Ikawa in there, but I can probably find one Ikawa or two agendas before the runner can completely stabilize their economy. So I see the logic behind it now, but it was definitely something I was thinking about at the time was uh, should this is keeping one of the extra Ikawas there worth it? But
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, probably that's like very valid and very good. Um, I felt like if she's hitting 1 in 6s, she also has to do so with 2 credits and a click,
yeah,
right? To even steal that Ikawa. So I'm feeling kind of okay about it. I'm not feeling super okay about drawing into 2 more agendas here.
yeah, yeah. I like that. Yeah. So, oh, actually, let's see if I can look at if. Oh shoot! If we go to court view, oh beautiful. Okay, so I can see what you had. Okay, so your top five were Ikawa, Offworld, Mavirus, Seamless, and Mick. Yeah.
Hmm.
So there are some times when you can just like install the Ikawa here, but I think considering that you all three seamlesses are in the bin, so you're only going to have one back in your hand. It's probably not one of them, um, and you only do have 8 credits, so like it does become a bit hairy to score this out. So I like the Mick quite a bit. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and throwing it on server one. I mean, this might be like a dumb brain play, right? But throwing it on server one um, kind of just puts them off of there being agendas maybe on top. But anyway, I see the 2 agendas on top, and I see my hand is starting to get a little bit flooded.
yeah.
So I do go with just a spin doctor there for safety.
No, I think the spin doctor makes a ton of sense. I think this is probably the turn where it's like, oh, now is maybe a good time to pop the border control because you're trying to get value out of the brands, and you have modifiers and archives, so their Amakua gain is pretty marginal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so
but
I was bummed with the archives mark here because I wanted my spin doctor to be able to like chill for a second. But then the archives mark came up, and I was like, oh, well, there goes that. And I knew the two agendas were on top. I'm okay with letting Kurapir get to two counters.
Hmm.
So it wasn't for me 100% the time for the pop yet, but that's coming up. And again, I don't know if that was ultimately right. I mean, when you said a couple times ago that I probably should have popped it, I mean that's probably valid.
Yeah.
This is where I should have popped it,
Yeah,
though.
this is actually, I think we chatted a little bit after this game, and this was definitely like the place where like it makes the most sense to pop, because this is
Yeah.
the third Kurapira counter. Izzy's been collect. Izzy is rolling archives like a demon here, which is,
Hmm.
to quote, archives look soft.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
this, yeah, this charge
And
it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
at this no, 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 at this point I was still thinking about like the pinhole, but in retrospect it made no sense at this point to care about the pinhole, like
Yeah,
none whatsoever.
yeah,
um
Managarm and Void, two gatekeepers, and an MIC. Like one pinhole doesn't matter here. The bypass, it's kind of funny in retrospect. Is he seeing two cards out of HQ here? Probably keeps the game going like another turn because it's like a 50-50 on any one access here to bounce the Ikoa back to hand.
no, no, no,
Um,
there's no Hermes out yet.
oh, there's no Hermes out. Okay, never mind. Yeah, the diversion is I guess right in that situation then.
Yeah, I was very happy to see the diversion though, because I knew that if Izzy came back even to C2, it ultimately wouldn't matter
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there was no Hermes. And I wanted to also install. I mean, putting the Anoetic down is kind of just standard anyway on that last turn, but um, I wanted to put it down to make sure I put down two cards in case a Hermes did come down, and in case there was
yeah.
a steal to at least make it a 50-50 off of the bounce.
Yeah. Yeah, there's maybe a weird line where it's actually correct to put the void on HQ just to avoid multi-access there. But it ends up being a little bit of like oh, I'm just throwing cards out of HQ to defend HQ. Is this really sustainable kind of thing? Um, but
Yeah, no, that's probably correct. Yeah, yeah, because again, I mean, I was just overly concerned about the remote, hence,
yeah,
still worrying about the pinhole through archives when I didn't need to anymore. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think putting the Anoetic on HQ, because you're not getting through Brand like three times or
yeah,
twice or whatever it
yeah, yeah.
is. So even if the Hermes does come down, that would have been a way to safeguard. Yeah, yeah, that was probably the better play.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me having also not played for many hours when compare, to make that call from the sidelines. And ultimately, like, I think you're still fine even if a Hermes did come down and a bounce happened. Um, like, you'd still be able to recover just fine, I think, from the sport state. But yeah. So this is kind of PD doing PD stuff to a large extent, though I think you did a really good job of not trying to overextend, which is often a thing I try and do. As I mentioned, like one of my early lines, like, oh, what if we just try and push in the remote? And there was really no need to. And so controlled play doing a lot of good work for you here. Um,
Yeah, I still ended up on one credit there. So,
yeah. All right, let's
or I
get,
guess five really, because I didn't really need to resin pop that border control, but
yeah.
not infinite for sure.
And this is the finals, if I'm remembering correctly, right? The grand finals, right?
This
It
is the
was you running.
first.
Oh, okay. This is the
No,
first final.
this is the first of the two grand finals. I forget what the sort of nomenclature for it is,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, I have to win
Cool,
two. Yeah, he has to just win one. And so this is the first of the two.
cool. Okay, so what's the lose general game plan against precision design?
So in practice, I had a lot of success against PD,
Mm-hmm.
and which is kind of why I was surprised that uh, I was able to take so many games off of lose with the PD this in this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, PD needs seamless to score. Well, wants seamless to score.
Yeah.
It has its big ice, right? So, I'm just kind of doing pretty classic Lou stuff, right? Let me make you get rid of your seamlesses with imp. Let me make you get rid of your big ice. Um, once some trouble ice comes down, like wrap around, or you know, like gatekeepers, even at zero strength, right? That's when I
Mm-hmm.
want to kind of find my cleavers or my buzz saws, or even like my boomerangs
Yeah.
and botuluses, right? And I just want to sort of keep PD in check, right? If they get one or even two scores, that's fine. Um, as long as I'm keeping them in check, and I want to, have the momentum at the end, right? Like, I mean, I want to be
Yeah.
building the entire time, obviously, but I want to sort of slow them down to start until I can kind of build up that doom rig.
Cool. This seems like an obvious mulligan. It's a lot of niche or late game cards. So,
Yeah.
like, unfortunately, you mulligan into some of your other niche slash late game cards.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Between the two hands, I would have preferred the first one.
yeah,
But that's okay, because I think this kind of quickly turns around.
yeah, that
Um,
yeah. This is a good steel skin, I'll say.
yeah, yeah. Um, it is also worth saying, I don't remember, I don't know if I can't remember. I don't think Augustus Caesar was on magnets though. I think, which was pretty helpful. Um,
Uh, I see
I could be wrong about that. Oh
we
no,
have
there
two
is.
magnets in the list that
Oh,
we
he does have two magnets.
scraped up,
Oh,
but
never mind. Never mind. I'm definitely thinking about something else, because I definitely do get magneted.
oh,
If not in
okay,
this game, then in the previous game.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Forget I said that. That was silly. It is worth saying though that this is the second time that we're doing this matchup.
mm-hmm.
The first time was in the very first round of the cut, and I got pretty handily demolished.
Yeah,
So I am a little bit, nervous about this matchup, and a little bit
especially
wiser
with a
about maybe how
start,
to approach
yeah.
it. Y-
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
like that. There's definitely a part of me that's like, oh man, do I need to throw the Bartolus down to get somewhere? But I actually really like the like, no, we're just opponents spent a turn setting up. I'll spend a turn setting up. There's no pressure on me to actually do anything yet. Keeping in reasonable credit totals, like just good kind of netrunner fundamentals here. I like quite a bit.
yeah. That was exactly the thinking. Inst- two ice over centrals, and then the hedge fund. I'm like, okay, I can just get my paladin down, and I can get my cookbook ready. I'm ready to make a move when you're actually going to make a move. I can just hold off and react to you.
Yeah. So opponent presents they get the very nice PD opening or PD hand of hedge fund, ice, card, and remote. So what was your plan here? I guess.
I think it's just botulous run, try to
Yeah.
trash to get Lou going. Hope it's not a magnet.
Yeah. Yeah, and like if it's a magnet, you go, okay, you got me right. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, so I'm already losing a click down to zero regardless, so there's no point in breaking both, any of the click subroutines.
mhm.
And I'm really happy to see the pop here. I know that signals it's an agenda, and most likely an off-world, because
Yeah.
otherwise it doesn't really make much sense otherwise. But you know, the board the board is pretty clear again.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth mentioning, given that this is a your. Oh, interesting. This is your digital life PD that's not playing big deal. Not sure how I feel about that one. Um,
Hmm. And it's
yeah,
also not playing that. Was it like Midnight Arcology,
yeah,
the agenda that draws you three?
yeah. I that one I could give or take. I think Architect Deployment Test is probably better even in the your digital life big deal lists. But I think it does suggest
Yeah.
that this the top end of this deck isn't going to like surprise you with a burst score. So the game plan you outlined of just control. They can get 2 points. They can get 4 points. That's not going to be enough if I can get my engine set up in time. And so just diligently drawing for what you need. Um, this is, if I'm guessing, install Solidarity Badge, discard Knobkery, beautiful. I
Hmm.
do know how to play Netrunner a little bit, and we now see the we now see the cost of Augustus kind of having spent that tempo, they just kind of spent a turn doing very little, which Lou is always going to be happy about.
Yeah,
Um,
so I really just got, 2 turns now to get more set up, which is really, really important to me because this draw has been straight garbo so far.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Seeing two breakers is just really really rough here. Um, Now, finally, I think, what is this, like 2 turns after the score, Augustus has finally built a new remote. Gachapon is here in time. You have a couple of options. I'm definitely a little bit sad to see this group of cards. These are all, of course, the good cards in the deck, so you have to make some difficult choices.
yeah, I mean, I keep the chips.
Yeah.
I know that I installed the Audrey. I think yeah, I get rid of one of the boomerangs maybe.
Yeah, I think you get
Um,
rid of the boomerang and the price, and you keep the other, and you keep the strike fund. Um,
yeah. So I do want to start to get the econ engine going with Audrey's Strike Fund. Hopefully, Buffer Drive if it comes out soon. I still
yeah,
have one boomerang in the deck, and I have a Botulus in hand, and I have an Audrey with a counter. So I'm feeling
yeah.
okay about letting go of that second boomerang.
Yeah, I guess I'm probably like, oh, can I draw once to see if I get an imp so that I can deal with anything in server two, and then trying to challenge the remote. But challenging the remote click one is not bad here by any means. Um,
Yeah, because I thought I could just get the I've had worse for free,
yeah,
basically
that makes
off
some
of
sense.
off of Audrey. But I think that using it to get the imp would have been equally valid, and it would have gotten the imp. So
Yeah, yeah. I guess
it
there's a question of like, oh yeah, should you throw out the first steel skin just to draw for two clicklessly? Because yeah, getting an imp here would have been nice, but you got it now, and it's not like Audrey's not still in a good spot for you. Um,
yeah, and I had 6 credits, so I'm pretty comfortable trashing just about anything. I think I even resigned to trashing a Trankrid if that's what it was. I
yeah, it is.
I, I don't have any fermenters yet, but like I'm pretty sure at this point fermenters are coming because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any yet, and I've been through half my deck, so I
Yeah,
think I'm kind of banking on that.
yeah. All right. So I like holding on the imp, just trying to devalue any purges that come through. We see discarding a num. I'm assuming the num is mostly for other matchups. Though I guess drafter it's fine against, and Ansel you'll do it if you have to. Um,
Yeah, it's for Ansel, or a Nancy,
mhm,
things like that, and I don't really ever want to hard install num. So a lot of times, even in against a deck that I know is running them, I'm pretty happy like waiting for a badge. Sorry, waiting for a chip to just
mhm,
bring num in for free.
yeah. Okay, so opponent is still moving pretty slowly, right? They, I think, clearly are having a bit of a tough draw with no second ice on the remote. The magnet is somewhat taxing, more on the Audrey virus counters than on Audrey itself. Like throwing away a card
Hmm.
is fine here. Um, and yeah, this is definitely a state where you want to get the buzzsaw out, and I suspect it's just going to be a pop fermenter for 6. Install. Oh, okay. I install knob to get
Yeah.
Audrey. Okay. Yeah, this is different than how I would have done it, but at the same time, this is actually getting you. This is the play that gets you closer to your end game engine than the line I was thinking of, which I think is a nice little play difference.
Yeah. I thought about the hit, fermenter, drop buzzsaw, go.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, for one click more, I end up accomplishing the same thing, but I have the knob carry out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
Yeah.
like, did anybody know that ScapeNet removes cards from the game? Like,
I would have assumed it trashed. I don't know why it RFGs, but tech card's gonna tech, I guess.
yeah, and this is part of the confusion in my first game against Augustus Caesar, and I picked the sides. I decided to Lou into his PD, being like, oh well, he'll scape net my chips, and my plan will just be if once I get 2 chips in the bin, I'll just immediately labor rights them back, right? And then
Yeah.
I'll be fine. And then I just started removing them from the game. I was just like, what is happening?
Uh, that's very funny. Yeah, it's interesting. Again, that's a turn where I may be thinking about putting on the buzzsaw, but I actually like appreciate that. Like, no, this gachapon, like most of the key pieces you need to find out of your deck are already out, right? You've got the cookbook, you've got the imp, you've got Audrey. So like gachapon has served its purpose. You have, yes, you don't have a fermenter on the board, but you're probably going to be okay without it for a little bit. So I like this, just like spending the minimum at all times to try and keep the corp honest. Finally, we
Yeah,
see,
yeah,
yeah, we see a click to draw, and then two cards go in, one in the remote, one protecting. This just seems like a game where it's going to be kind of yo-yoing back and forth around this remote for quite a bit here. Oh, let me do
hmm
one thing so that I get the apologies to everyone who's been screaming at themselves in the comments. Now clicks MU and stuff is on the right side. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah. Look at that.
Look at
Yeah. So
this. Yeah.
now I dropped the buzzsaw.
Yeah.
And part of it was also to kind of like keep it hidden, right? So that they think for that one turn that they can kind of start to tax out the Audrey triggers, the
Yeah.
Audrey counters. Um, it turns out that that wasn't really going to be the case anyway with this server, but
Hmm.
that was just kind of some of my thinking behind it.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is still a very nice setup for you. Yeah, Corp kind of has to purge here. I think the challenge, of course, with Corp purging here is they're taking a turn off. Knob Kree is going to reset the Audrey or the Imp, and you just get to keep kind of going.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I thought at the time that the purge was a mistake because I'm like, well, I just hit archives and then I just start hitting HQ.
mhm.
But I didn't know that there was the double wraparound on HQ and R&D. So I think given that, purging made a lot of
Yeah.
sense. And now I have the
Yeah.
simul chip in case I need to get back the Audrey anyway. But it turns out I don't want to spend. I can't spend literally can't spend 3 cards
Yeah. Yeah.
to deal with the wraparound.
Yeah. Yep. And so now Augustus is in a slightly safer position, right? You're on nominally 0 credits. There's a 3 deep ice on the remote now. I still think your odds of getting into this remote are pretty solid, but we haven't been talking about Augustus's hand, but they really don't have much choice here. And Botulus coming down from your hand is probably a death knell to this scoring attempt. Um,
Yeah, yes, yes. So they yeah, their hand like really started to get, flooded. And while you like to see the seamless, I mean, you do need to see pieces to keep you going, and they they don't. So they really don't have a choice but to jam.
yeah,
And I'm trashing the off-world here because, I still want the draw. I want the little bit of money. I want the Audrey credits.
yeah,
Um, it's starting to feel like Doomrig is getting assembled where I don't have to worry about the win as much as, just ensuring that my opponent is going to lose.
yeah, yeah. Because it's like at this point, even if this is a 4-2, now that you have the econ set up, the cleaver down, you can just start demolishing their hand one turn at a time. They probably do have seamlesses in hands. They may even have agendas in hand. You can kind of really get this ball rolling, and that's exactly what you transition to doing. Um,
Yeah. And the turn that he installs the Trank Grid, I read it as definitely not an agenda
mhm.
because I've been charging through and I just got an agenda last turn, so I think logic would hold like I'm probably going to run that again. So it made sense to me that he goes Trank Grid. That's kind of
Yeah,
what I read. And now I I do think looking at his hand, I mean, yeah, I really don't know what else he can do, but
yeah,
the regolith is just like, oh, you have now all the time in the world to
yeah.
start closing this off.
Yeah, it's to me. I don't mind installing Regolith. I think not resing the Regolith would maybe be the play I'd want to do, just to make you actually go, okay, do I have to go this turn instead? Um, just to try and tax
Yeah,
yours,
and
because the Regolith signal's all clear to me. It's probably trying to build toward the Bran, which isn't unreasonable, right? It's a good ice in this matchup, but it feels a little bit tough at this point.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
and then
now
we
you
get
get to
to the
snipe the
Brand.
brand, and honestly, that like we don't know, like you couldn't have known this, but that's looking at Augustus's hand. That's basically GG here, I think. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And
just
so now I decide I don't have much else to do. I might as well just get that.
yeah. All right,
So now, his list is only running one Mavirus, one
man of
Managarm,
garm.
right?
Yeah.
So I know that that's the Mavirus now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay,
That's a good point.
yeah. So now the question is that I'm asking myself, is like, can I get into this despite there being a Mavirus, or even is getting into this server what I need to do now? If I knew his hand, I would just feel like no, like I don't. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
keep hitting HQ. Um, but yeah, I my goal here is to get him to pop the Mavirus and to stop him from scoring so that he doesn't get the Mavirus back now
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah, and this is actually I think why Boomerang is such a nice include in this list because you can just Boomerang the drafter here, and you just can't be stopped from getting in at that point. Um, and but you decide actually
Yeah.
who needs it.
Well, because I want him to pop the Mavirus here,
Yeah.
right? And I think if I put the boomerang on, he doesn't do that.
Oh, that's fair. So I guess to me, I'm just thinking, oh yeah, if he pops them a virus, I still get all the way through the bottom of the server. I put a counter on Imp. I access the face down. I access Trank, and then can just kind of
Oh yeah,
go
yeah,
on
yeah.
about my day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I think that would have been better. And then Audrey ends up on two counters, I think, instead of one. No, you're right. You're right. That just would have been smarter. It also would have saved a click. I was looking at the video and the commentary
Mm-hmm.
on this, and they were wondering why I just didn't run through HQ to get uh, you know um, a counter on Imp to trash something, to put a counter on Audrey and run back. But I really wanted them to not have the Trent grid anymore,
Yeah,
and I wanted to end with an Audrey counter. But I think your way does that better than the way that I ended up doing it. Yeah,
yeah. I think it spends a
Boomerang
little
Go.
bit less resources. Yeah, because
Yeah,
it's just like
Boomerang Go.
it's click one boomerang, click two go. Like you just simul chip, recycle it on the gatekeeper, break through, break the drafter, mag that you break for a credit. You spend a simul chip and a boomerang, and the boomerang even goes back, and you get in for one real credit, which is pretty
Yeah,
darn good for what does that end up being, like a 11 or 12 cost server
yeah,
after all
yeah.
the ice res and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. Now, yeah, and so that and it also saves the click, and it also puts Audrey on two counters at the end, I think.
yeah,
Oh
yeah. I
no,
think
no,
it does.
no. Well,
No, because you don't have the
potentially.
four credits to trash the trank. So yeah, you still have to steal the architect.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Now, I mean, my opponent just keeps drawing into agendas and
yeah,
can't do anything.
yeah, for sure. It's hard to know exactly what I would do here, like not knowing their hand. I think the run HQ though makes just a ton of sense. Um, I like
I
the
mean,
yeah
I haven't really been hitting agendas out of
HQ. Yeah,
HQ with the imp, so I think that's kind of what confused me a little bit, right?
yeah,
I'm like, why is my opponent just keep jamming, right? Because I was
yeah,
running HQ pretty dedicatedly, not seeing
yeah.
anything. So I'm like, why is he not just slowing down? It's like, oh, they've all been agendas, but I just haven't been hitting them.
Yeah, yeah, and Augustus concedes here because they have two Icolas in hand and Illumina on the board. Just an absolutely dire board state for them. Zero credits. This is Lou doing Lou's job of getting in control of the game, headlocking the runner, or headlocking the corp, and then just chipping away at him. So
Yeah, yeah. And I think I benefited in this game from his, you know, like poor draw from the
yeah,
mid game on.
yeah, for sure. I mean, we didn't talk about it because I think it's always I'd rather focus on what my guess is, what get decisions you're making, right? But Augustus did have a very very tough draw here with a lot of agendas pretty early in the game.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
All right, well, John, I want to give the floor to you one final time for closing thoughts. Anything you want to change about these lists if you were to run this tournament back, say in a week's time? Uh,
I might, part of the conversation with Lou has always been among, us, in the Snare Bears going back and forth about some of this Gachapon versus moshing. And I
mm-hmm,
love, I love both of those cards. I landed on Gachapon for this list. But I think if I had to do it again, I think I would go with moshing,
mm,
actually. Um, you know, the list doesn't need a ton of money
mm-hmm,
to get going, but it does need kind of like a starting floor of some money.
yeah,
And moshing can help with that. And also, while I like being able to look through six cards, and grab one with Gachapon, sometimes like just drawing three cards is really really nice because
yeah,
you're flying through your deck a little bit quicker than with Gachapon, which is kind of setting you up for that end state of, buffer drive and infinite recursion of the strike funds and everything like that. And, in the case that you need multiple pieces to get set up, moshing can at times help with that a little bit more. And that's what I was having
mm-hmm,
some trouble with
mm-hmm.
in this particular game.
Cool. That yeah, that's a really nice. I was actually thinking about like, oh yeah, moshing would have been great with that opening hand. So it's nice to see that that's kind of a consideration in your mind too. Okay, well,
Yeah.
John.
And the
Oh.
PD, I don't know. The PD just seems like it's just like a very foundational
Yeah.
fundamentals deck, and it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like okay,
Cool.
do I play one of this or two of this? Like you swap this ice for that ice, and kind of then say yeah, the rest of this is good. Um, but yeah, all right. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks so much for sharing your time with me and by osmosis, I guess, with everyone else. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, I really appreciate the invite, Jeff. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the videos that you do. They're awesome.
Oh, thank you.